Disabilities is such an interesting phenomenon because anyone can become disabled at any second of their life through genetics, accidents, or just randomly happens. You never know, but anyone can become disabled. Yet no one likes to talk about disabilities or try to find accommodations for disabled people, especially back then. And it wasn't exactly mainstream to try to help out the person abandoning their wheelchair, trying to climb up the stairs to get to the train. Till in 1973, the Section 504 banning discrimination against people with disabilities on a financial federal assistance. With that act, that kickstarted the first draft of Americans with Disability Act, with Discrimination Diaries, where people spoke about their daily barriers of being disabled and what they had to go through in life, especially with the cities, such as not being allowed into places because of their service dog, not being allowed to have jobs because they're disabled, being paid less than non-disabled people, or, as I mentioned before, people having to abandon their wheelchairs for trains and buses. Then, in 1990, Americans with Disabilities, or ADA, was signed by Congress. Yay! Which required disabled accommodations and ban discrimination against disabled people. With that, you may be asking, whoa, what makes a person disabled? Well, the definition of disability from ADA is person with physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. With that added, that means people who are impaired of basic activities such as walking, talking, seeing, or hearing. If you have a history of disabilities, genetics, the things you did in your life, or anyone that has an impairment that's not temporary, or if it is temporary, it lasts more than 6 months. Another thing about ADA is that they have 5 titles. Title number 1 is employment. Title number 2, public transportation. Title number 3 is public accommodations. Title number 4 is telecommunications. And title number 5 is provisions. Title 1 is employment. It says disabled people should have equal opportunity and benefits as everyone else. It is enforced by the U.S. Equal Employee Opportunity Commission. With that, they refuse to let discrimination happen with hiring, firing, pay, job assignments, promotions, layoffs, and training. With employment, they are legally required to accommodate for your disabilities at the workplace. Title 2 is the public entities and public transportations. This regards there needing to be more space and accommodation for wheelchair users in public transportation, and that disabled people need accessibility to all state and local public places. This is enforced by the Office of Fair Transportation and Equal Opportunity. It also bans housing discrimination. A huge thing about this title is that the Architectural Barrier Act of 1969 exists, which means all buildings made after September of 1969 must be accessible, and this is enforced by the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board. Title 3 is accommodation. This is one of the most arguably needed things for all disabled people. This is the ability to have full and equal enjoyment of goods, services, facilities, and accommodations of public space. This includes hotels, recreationals, transportation, education, dining, stores, care providers, and public places. This sadly excludes private clubs, unions, and religious organizations. 4 is telecommunications. This requires all telecommunicating companies in the U.S. to take steps to ensure functionally equivalent services for disabled consumers. This is more specifically for deaf, hard of hearing, or people with speech impediments. An example of this accommodation is braille on computer keyboards. And finally, title number 5 is provisions. People who exercise their rights under the ADA or assist others exercising their rights are protected from retaliation from anybody else. And that was my basics on ADA. Although disabled people have more rights than they did 33 years ago, it is just the bare minimum, and even then, it is oftentimes below the bare minimum, with a lot of loopholes happening with disabled people and their rights. I hope they have better rights for disabled people, but I highly doubt that with the way people are treating disabled people now. But my name is Tommy Strong, and now is me talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990.